Does your financial advisor take the time to really listen to you? Is your financial strategy personalized to you and your family? Will your financial advisor be there as your life and financial situation change? Hi, I'm Jerry Mangona, your Edward Jones financial advisor, and I live here in Corktown, just a few blocks from the Daily Detroit studios. When we work together, we'll focus on what's important to you. We'll use an established process to create a personalized financial strategy backed by the advice, tools, and resources to help you reach your goals. And we'll partner to help your strategy stay on track. Contact me toll-free today at 866-975-8655. Again, that's 866-975-8655. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Hello, friends, and welcome to your Daily Detroit. It is Wednesday, March 15th, 2023. We are sharing what to know and where to go in Southeast Michigan. So today we're going to look a little bit beyond the headlines on a story. I don't know if you've been looking at the news, but there has been the announcement of the Change Collective. This was rolled out with a fancy video by President Barack Obama, and the collective is focusing on how to build leaders, how to bridge divides, how to push things forward, all things that, frankly, here at Daily Detroit, we talk about. So I couldn't get the former president of the United States on the line, but I did get the next best thing, the managing director, Dexter Mason, to talk about what's happening. Joining me virtually, Dexter Mason. He is the managing director of the Change Collective. This is a new national leadership network out of Civic Nation. Now, that sounds all fancy, but it's got some really interesting stuff happening in Detroit that you can be a part of. Dexter, welcome to Daily Detroit.
No, Jared, it's such an honor and privilege as a native Metro Detroiter and proud resident of Detroit. It's definitely a privilege and honor to be part of this show. And thank you for allowing us to share more about the Change Collective today.
Oh, yeah. When I saw it coming through the press materials, I was like, oh, this is really interesting. Not only the ties to former President Barack Obama, but also the fact that it's in specifically three cities. So before we get into all of that with the Change Collective, what is the main goal?
Yes, honestly, the main goal really is to reinvent civic life for a new generation. We know right now, and we see this every single day, right? We see, social isolation, political polarization, civic disengagement, and a lot of these kind of buzzwords. But people just, there's a lot of, negativity you see in the media, you see in our politics, you see in our civic engagement life. And so our goal really is like, how can we recapture that? How can we create kind of a mediating institution for leaders and people to come together, solve problems, especially on the local and community level? So that's our goal and ethos really, is to reinvent that civic life for a new generation of leaders in our local communities.
Well, and I tell people all the time, and sometimes they think that I've got like horns growing out of my head, but I will tell you that if you want to actually make a change in the world, starting locally. Now, I know you have experience in some great places. I want to talk about that a little bit, but your impact locally can be so outsized because you're going to know what's going on in your community. You're going to be able to be part of a group that's focused and doing things. There is truth to, if there's only 10 people at the meeting and you're one of them, you got a lot more voice than if there's 150,
Right.
And making local change is part of what will change your everyday, day-to-day life in a big way.
Exactly. And that's where it starts, right? And people always think about the national, like what's going on in Washington, D.C. and et cetera. We know that, even us being impacted in Detroit, some of the decisions we don't think is probably the most kind of like sexy or exciting, those are ones that affect our day-to-day life. Who picks up our garbage? How is our garbage picked up? What about recycling? Our infrastructure with water and flooding, and me being a native Metro Detroit and being so close to the river and experiencing flooding and all these things. We know that if we're able to equip these kind of these emerging leaders in our cities, the next leaders of our communities, that's probably the best investment we can make to make long-term sustainable change.
So with the Change Collective, it's in three cities. Why is it that it's in three cities to start with?
Yeah, so it's a very good question. So the three cities that there are going to be in Detroit, Chicago, and then Jackson, Mississippi. And so a few reasons why these cities were picked. And of course, I was very excited about Detroit. So even before I joined the Change Collective team, Detroit was actually picked as one of the pilot communities. So it definitely warmed my heart when, as I was interviewing and ultimately started this role, that Detroit was one of the cities. But the main reason why really is because Civic Nation, which is our kind of umbrella organization. Civic Nation is a national nonprofit based in DC and is an ecosystem of various campaigns, initiatives, which include the Change Collective, have a track record, demonstrated track record, and a strong network of community partners, organizations, stakeholders in all three cities. So we really wanted to take a different approach where what does it look like if we do this type of work in a larger city like Chicago? What about in Detroit, which is, we call a larger city, but, you think about Jackson, Mississippi as well, kind of a smaller but still urban city in the South. And so we really kind of picked these three because they have of course diverse in terms of what the issues are, local issues, but really is we just thought this would be a great way to kind of look at how to tackle local issues, a great way for us to kind of see, as a pilot year, what are we learning from these? And as we do expand over time, looking at our learnings from all three cities, looking at a city in the South, a couple cities in the Midwest, what can we do to continue to sustain this change and build our program overall?
From a day-to-day on the ground perspective, what kind of work will you be doing here?
Yeah, so currently in my current work, we have a great team at the Change Collective. We have people who are representing actually different parts of the country. We have folks on our team from Lincoln, Nebraska, Salt Lake City, Utah, DC, myself in Detroit. So we are really excited. We have really diverse perspective from a geographic standpoint. And my role as managing director is several things. I help manage all of our strategic partnerships in all three cities. So these are community-based organizations, individuals, folks that we really, as we enter the three cities we talked about, Detroit, Chicago, and Jackson, we really want to enter these places with humility. So even before we launched our program a few weeks ago, we really wanted to make sure that we had support and buy-in from the community. We were talking to different local stakeholders and really sharing the ethos and vision of our program. Also finding ways to receive feedback in advance of our program and be able to kind of figure out, is it needed in this community? We also did a leadership landscape, a leadership program landscape, all three cities. Like, how can we be a complement to current existing programs that are going on in the community? And so, yeah, that is kind of my day-to-day, is really managing our strategic partnerships. Also part of our program, it's a 6-month leadership development program that our members will go through in all three cities. And so helping to manage kind of the day-to-day of what the program design is going to be, what program topics are going to be discussed. And we have a really strong team that came from training and development and academia that are really building what this kind of leadership curriculum is going to look like. So those are kind of the two hats I really held, is our strategic partnerships and our learning and design for the program, and really around the program experience for our inaugural cohort members.
If someone signs up for this inaugural cohort, and this is something that people can do, who is it for, and what are the goals to kind of teach people with it?
Yeah, we have an application process that right now it is currently live on our change-collective.org/apply. So definitely want folks to apply for this program from now until April 14th as a deadline. And we're looking to have 25 emerging leaders in all three cities, Chicago, Detroit, and Jackson, Mississippi. So we'll have 75 emerging leaders from 3 different cities in our pilot year. And what our cohort members will go through is a 6-month leadership development program. They'll learn topics around power mapping their network, how to fundraise, media training. And so this program is not running for public office. This program really is for folks who are doing great work currently in their local communities, whether it's folks who are working in the private sector, public sector. We've talked to folks right now who are applying for a program that are mural artists in different communities and using the power of art around social justice issues. We're looking for folks who might work in the tech sector, but really care about the digital divide in their communities. We're looking for folks that are maybe restaurant owners, small business owners that are using their space for positive change in their communities and neighborhoods that they're in. And that's really what our goal is, to kind of create this national network of local change makers, providing more resources, training, mentorship, to continue to work they're doing, and hopefully take it to another level. And what makes us very unique as well is that we actually will bring all these local change makers together for a national convening to kick off the program in June. And then they'll actually go through, and then after that, the cohort members will return back to their respected cities and go through this 6-month leadership program I talked about. So it's really great that as part of the cohort experience, folks will not only gain network within their regions or their local communities, but they also be able to connect with folks that are doing maybe similar work or complementary work in other communities as well. I think, for example, imagine in Jackson, Mississippi, there's definitely a strong agricultural community, especially in the Delta region down in Mississippi. Imagine how cool it would be if we had these rural farmers, especially farmers of color in these communities, connecting with urban farmers here in Chicago or in Detroit. Right, and sharing best practice and be able to connect around the importance of agriculture in their community. So that's what really excites us right now, is really be able to provide that connectivity and that relationship and that network for these local change makers nationwide.
Well, that's something I've learned in my career too. It's not just the work; it's also about the network, because you can draw so much from people that you meet, people that are doing things that are aligned with you. And the truth is that everything you get comes from somebody else, right? Whether it's money for your
Yes.
project, supporters, customers, all that kind of thing, business partners, organizational, if you're working on the nonprofit side. So building those connections is crucial. It's going out there and meeting people and knowing people and all that kind of stuff.
Exactly. And that's what our goal is, really, is to, we know the power of relationships, the power of people, versus this is people centered work, trying to rebuild our civic infrastructure. You have people really be empowering these civic leaders to know that they are civic leaders. Like, our goal for this local cohorts is really to have, as I mentioned, 25 leaders, but we want to have representing from, like, of course, identities and backgrounds, diversity in that regard, but we really are looking at vocations and professional backgrounds and even political ideology. We know that's something that has been harder to achieve, but how can we get people who care about their communities, might have a different pathway or a different way to problem solve, but how can we bring them together to have some meaningful conversations and really try to teach them how to engage with organized members of their communities already, public officials, other institutions. And one thing that I would love to add about the cohort, remember, we'll actually create what is called a civic action project, which is really focused on a local issue in their community that they're currently working on or want to work on, and turn that into a vision and hopefully to a reality. And so that's really what all we want to focus on, is also to how we actually have action-based work within the program and carry that out after they're done with the program.
Yeah. And it's good to see all the multiple facets. Now, Dexter, I love talking to you, but a lot of the media outlets in town, they kind of cut and embedded that interview or that conversation with former President Barack Obama, kind of talking about the program. Can you talk about his involvement and how he's tied to it? Because I think people will see that. You were mentioned about political ideologies. They will see that and then go, what's the tie here? Let's talk about that tie in like honest terms.
Yeah, in honest terms, I think we all know that, President Obama, he really does believe it's really up to the next generation to tackle some of our greatest societal challenges. And so, he is very excited that he was, able to highlight our important work and our launch. But right now, President Obama's involvement, it really is our advisory board and our Change Collective team that will be the main drivers of this work. President Obama's involvement really was to help amplify and lift up our launch, because he really believes in equipping and empowering the next young leaders to tackle on these, societal challenges. So that is really his involvement. But really, our advisory council that we have, that is nationwide and has a diverse set of folks that are from different political ideologies, from different backgrounds, from different sectors, and also our Change Collective team, as I mentioned, are the drivers of this work.
And for a time, you actually worked in the White House yourself, according to your bio.
Yes, I did. Yes, I was a proud member of the White House, Obama, the Obama White House early in my career, and definitely, kind of some of the ethos that was and some of the programming and change that we tried to make there. It definitely is aligned with what we're trying to do with the Change Collective.
How did some of that work shape you? I also know that you did some stuff with the Kresge Foundation and a startup and things like that.
Yeah, so my background is actually very fascinating in my eyes. I feel like it felt like I zigzagged a lot. As you mentioned, I worked in philanthropy at the Kresge Foundation. I've worked in sports and tech and public service and in government. The thread line I've always had was about impact. I really feel like there's multiple ways to solve problems. It can come, of course, like I think government is the strongest lever to make the most positive change in public policy in society. But, for me, there's also other ways. You have to partner with private sector. You have to partner with philanthropy. There's not just one way to solve a problem. There's a lot of stakeholders that potentially are involved to make the most changes. So that's been my background, is how can what different sectors, can make the most impact, and how can I, play a very small role in contributing to that impact. And that's really, kind of where I am right now, the culmination of my career working in diverse sectors, and being personally involved with a handful of leadership development programs in my career kind of shaped it kind of was a great culmination of me being in this role now at the Change Collective. And as I mentioned, Change Collective, we really are trying to, bring diverse sectors and individuals together. So for me, like, this is just a great culmination of another way to make change. I've worked in how to use the power of philanthropy, the power of tech, the power of government. Now this is the power of empowering leaders and young leaders in particular to make long-term change. So I'm really excited to explore another tool in a toolkit to make positive change, especially here in Detroit.
Yeah, and looking at those experiences, I mean, you had to have learned a lot from working,
Yes.
with the White House and working with foundations, things like that. What are a couple of things, if you look back, what are a couple of things that you learned or kind of got out of those experiences that shape kind of what you're doing now with the Change Collective?
I think the biggest thing is that there's no one way to solve a problem. I think there's multiple ways to look at it. So I think I learned two things. One is there's multiple ways to solve a problem. And number two, the power of listening. I think a lot of times we're so big on trying to promote our own platforms, promote our own ideals, our ideologies, and perspective, which is important. But I think taking a step back and listening, I think is something that, as we talk about isolation and the rise of, sometimes you think about negative impacts of social media and these and various platforms, the power of the art and the science of listening and listening to others, especially from a diverse perspective, has been eroded in my personal opinion. And for me, those are some things I've taken in my career, that there's, multiple ways to solve a problem, and also just listening to others. And that's how you can solve the problems. I can represent a certain perspective myself, but my perspective is not the only one that can solve this problem. So I really think, kind of going back to the Change Collective, those are two things we do want to use this program to help build bridges and hopefully lower and decrease divides. And so I think, once again, having folks that are from diverse backgrounds, skill sets, professional backgrounds, can help really to help solve that problem, and also bring these people together that might come from these various perspectives, could really help promote the listening aspect that I have learned from my career thus far.
Well, the tricky thing about democracy is the understanding that there are going to be people that live with you, next to you, around you, that don't think like you, and we all have to find a way to work together.
Exactly. And we know that the only way democracy works is when we're all participating, right? We're all participating in some way, in addition to voting. How can we bring mobilized communities to vote? We are a nonpartisan organization. This initiative is nonpartisan as well. And our goal really is to just bring these folks together to be re-engaged. Because we definitely have seen that civic disengagement has been a part of the fabric of our country over the last several years. And hopefully this program can play, is not one solution, but probably just one way to help contribute to go back to that fabric of democracy, as you said, participation, re-engagement, and civic life.
So I know we touched a little bit on it before, but someone is interested in this, they want to learn more, maybe they want to be part of this cohort. What can they do?
So please go on our website. You can apply right now. Applications we're now live applications, and the deadline to apply is April 14th. So please go to change-collective.org. You can go to change-collective.org, and you can see more about our information about the Change Collective, who's on our advisory board, what are we have FAQs, and then of course our link to apply. So we definitely look forward to having just diversity from all backgrounds to apply. Even folks, one thing that I want to add about some of our our hopefully potential cohort too. A lot of times these leadership development programs, there's might be folks like myself who have multiple degrees. We really want to, make sure this program is inclusive as possible. So folks that maybe not have had formal higher education training, or didn't finish college, or, have community college credits, we want them to apply. We just want to see a demonstrated track record, a positive change within your local community. And those are folks that we're trying to bring into this cohort. So I just want to reemphasize to your listeners that please apply. If you don't think that you should apply for this, that means you should. So please apply at change-collective.org.
It's amazing over the years how many times I've seen people apply for jobs and then get them when they feel like, they step out and step firmly and do it.
Exactly. And that's what we really want to make sure that people, especially, in all these three cities, they were intentionally picked in Detroit, Jackson, Mississippi, and Chicago. We want to make sure that our cohort reflects the city.
Well, Dexter Mason, the managing director of the Change Collective here in Detroit, thank you so much for your time on the podcast. And I hope it's not your last.
It will not be my last. I look forward to continue to listen to your show, Jared. And thank you once again for the opportunity. It was definitely a privilege to be able to talk to you today, and have a good rest of your day. Thank you so much.
If you've got feedback on this episode or any episode of the podcast, dailydetroit@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening to your Daily Detroit. I'm Jer Stays. Remember that you are somebody, and I'll see you around Detroit.